Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today I am here to wrap up what I read in the month of September. So I made a TBR for September, and such is life this year, I barely followed it. I will go through the books that I did end up reading this month because I did end up reading, I believe, like 13 books, so yeah. So first up for the books, I brought a couple of reads along with me when my husband and I went on our anniversary vacation, and I did read both of those, and I bought a couple of books while I was on vacation. And as for the first book that I ended up reading, that was How Right You Are, Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse. It is one of the Jeeves and Wooster books. I actually don't know where this sits in the series, like what number it is. I know it's not the first one. Yeah, I've read this book before. This is basically following Bertie Wooster, who is this, basically, I don't know if he has like a technical title or anything in England, but he does have money, like his family has money. He is someone who manages to get himself into lots of trouble all the time, sometimes because that's just how he is, and then sometimes because other people thrust him in trouble, like in this novel. I guess a man about town sort of kind of dude, and he relies heavily on his fabulous butler Jeeves, who always knows the right thing to do and the right thing to say and the right way to handle things. Jeeves is great at pretty much everything, not only butlering, but also getting Wooster out of lots of trouble. I absolutely loved it. I loved it the first time I read it. I really loved rereading it. It reminded me again how much I do want to read more of this series because they're just a wonderfully good time. This was absolutely hilarious. I laughed audibly more than once, which is a big deal for me because while I do get amused by a lot of books, I don't always laugh audibly at things within them, and this had me laughing like multiple times out loud. Everything from the bumbling Wooster to the commentary to just the way things are worded in here and everything. I just really loved it. The characters are like the best part of this, and I think that the writing is like super snappy and clever and very witty. Even though this was like definitely set a while ago, and you can definitely tell that it is set a while ago just based on certain phrases that are used and the different language and some of the different descriptions of the setting and things. The humor in it is very timeless, and I could picture it in my head like a movie, which might have been helped along by the fact that when I was younger I did used to watch the Jeeves and Wooster specials when they came on PBS, starring Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry, which are amazing, by the way. You should really check those out. But yeah, I could picture it like an absolutely ridiculous movie in my head, and I think that added to my enjoyment overall. But I loved this reread. Highly, highly recommend. I definitely want to make it a point to, in the coming year, try to collect more of these books. And yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I finally finished reading My Side of the Mountain by Jean Craighead George. So I started a reread of this when I went camping partway through the summer, and then I finished it on our camping trip at the end of the summer, beginning of September actually. So this follows young Sam Gribley. I think he might be around 12 or 13 at the start of the novel, and he is very tired of city life. He has grown up in New York City with his parents, and his, I think it's like 8 siblings, 10 siblings, something like that. He has a lot of brothers and sisters. Anyway, they all share a small apartment in the city, and he just absolutely hates it. He longs for space of his own and freedom. So he has grown up hearing the story about land that his family used to own in the Catskills before they ran away to the ocean because they loved being on the sea more, and he thinks he'll love being in the woods more. So he's researched a whole bunch thanks to the New York Public Library, and decides to go off into the woods and find the land that used to be the old Gribley farm and make his new home there. And this is a chronicle of his time making his home on his side of the mountain. There's a falcon that is frightful. The falcon he decides to find, raise, and train. When I was a kid, I really adored this book. I was super into survivalist fiction, I guess you could say. I was super into that, and I was super into different movies about people just leaving a whole bunch of people and making their home in the woods and making lots of animal friends, because that's what I was super into. I would obsess over movies like that. A book like this just made me really happy. And I just really loved the idea of surviving off the land and making animal friends and just having an adventure like that. Reading this as an adult, my feelings about it have definitely changed. I am someone who appreciates the creature comforts a lot more, while I do still really need to stay connected to nature, just because I think that's important, first of all, and second of all, just because it helps me not be so crazy when I get a chance to be out in the quiet and just breathe. I'm definitely not someone who would be over the moon to make a home within a tree and live off of nothing but mashed potatoes that aren't mashed potatoes. They're like tubers that you pulled out of the ground randomly, and acorn pancakes and just weird shit like that, you know, that he eats in here. That sounded so good when I was a kid. I still really enjoyed this. I really loved the descriptions of everything that he made, and whether it was his home, his clothes, his tools. I loved hearing about like his animal interactions, especially with Frightful, but with other animals, that the wild animals that he just kind of got to know around his home and stuff. I still really enjoyed that, but I think that some of this book has lost its magic just a little bit, because as an adult, especially someone who is now looking at this from a more modern perspective in like 2022, when this was written in like I think the late 50s, it's just rather unbelievable that a 12 or 13-year-old boy could run away from home and live up in the Catskills. Like, even his parents would be like, sure, okay, no problem, pal, see you later. Don't put out like an all points bulletin for him or something. They're just like, yeah, he'll come back, or, you know, it's fine. So that just seemed a little bit unbelievable now, but I mean, this is a book for kids, and this was written again in like the, I think, mid to late 50s, so it makes sense that things would be a little bit different. Speaking of that time, it also kind of dated a little bit just based on certain interactions he had, ways that people talked with each other, and also some thoughts that Sam had later on in the book when he was talking to other people about like society and wanting to just out of nowhere just having these feelings of, I want to live off of the land and not rely on anyone or any technology or machines or anything like that. And it was really interesting, and almost felt kind of like beatniky in a sense. Kind of, I was getting like some vibes of, what do I want to say? Who is it? It's not Thoreau. Kerouac? Is it Jack Kerouac? Is that who I'm thinking of? I think that's who I'm thinking of. I got very big vibes of that from this, which is, I think, kind of dated it in a special sort of way. Even though I know there's still people who feel that way, who exist now and live in the world, especially in this country, but like it is still just, I don't know, to me it kind of dated it, and it was just kind of interesting looking at that now as something that I think I didn't really care about that much as a kid, but now it just kind of stood out as someone who has read more, learned more about history, been out there more in the world, time has gone by, like that kind of thing. I mean, some of the magic has gone out of it, but I did still really enjoy the book for the most part, and it did make me feel childlike a little bit, again, to be just like, I wouldn't eat this food, but it does kind of sound wonderful when he's describing it. Yeah, I gave this 4 stars. And the next thing I read was Wicked Vermont. This is by Thea Lewis, and this is basically as it says on the back, a darker side of the Green Mountains. This is looking at more weird history, questionable things, like rumors about whether or not Chester A. Arthur, who was a president, whether or not he was indeed born in Vermont, or if he was actually born in Canada, which I'd never heard of that rumor before. A little bit about like Annie Oakley, a little bit about H.H. Holmes, who was went to school at the University of Vermont before he ended up becoming a serial killer in Chicago. You know, just random different things like that in the various people. There was also a section on Ethan Allen, which actually, interestingly enough, the Ethan Allen sections tie back into what research book I am reading right now, which is Hidden History of Vermont. Made a bunch of notes on like stuff that I want to continue researching on, things I want to just double check on and look further into certain topics, because they might be something that I could work into my current work in progress, or something I could maybe throw into another work in progress, or just fun little interesting tidbits that I could store and potentially use later. This is definitely, I would say this is not a serious read, this is a starting point. Research read if there's stuff you're interested in. I would not suggest this to be the only weird history of Vermont kind of book that you look at if you're interested in this kind of thing. This was entertaining. It definitely was entertaining, but overall this is really not what I was expecting. I was definitely expecting something a little more professional, like, you know, other history texts that I have read recently or previously. I was just expecting a little more professionalism out of this, I guess. I guess maybe I should have researched the author. She is someone who basically, now I like ghost tours, but she's someone who just does ghost tours around Burlington. I don't think like history is majorly her thing for the most part. So this was like just a random fun project I think she took on. I mean, if you know more about this author, you can definitely contradict me if I'm getting things wrong. But it wasn't really what I was looking for or expecting, basically, out of this text. I was looking for weird things, yes, but still told professionally, and the way things were worded in here was a little more chatty than I was expecting, really. So I was a little thrown off. It's definitely not like a bad thing or anything, but I will say that this book's overall vibe is kind of like how History Channel is now, like what History Channel has become at the moment, like just full of really weirdly opinionated pieces, or the guy with the crazy hair who's convinced that aliens were the ones who made the pyramids because no way could anyone possibly make that, and it's all like aliens and Illuminati and shit, instead of like actual history pieces and documentaries and like Ken Burns films, you know, stuff like, so anyway, besides the aside note, it's not that I didn't like this book. I did enjoy it. I did find it entertaining. I did find something of merit through it, but this is mostly just stuff that I need to look into further and stuff that I want to research further and double check her facts and make sure that I don't get things wrong or in my own writing and stuff that I just want to check out. I did give it 4 stars because I felt like maybe I'm just being a little too harsh on this, but yeah. Next thing I read was I did a reread of Pumpkinheads by Faith Erin Hicks and Rainbow Rowell, and this is, I think, basically the only thing that was on my TBR for September that I actually read. I wanted to read this to help me get into the fall mood, and it definitely helped. I really love, I've said this before, I really love the artwork, the colors, the facial expressions of the characters. I found my favorite line in this, basically. I knew that I really liked this line, but this time I decided, no, this is my favorite thing out of the entire book, and it involves the characters here. It's about 2 friends, by the way, Josie and Deja, and they are fall friends, pumpkin patch friends. They worked throughout high school at this like crazy pumpkin patch, and they're friends just through the season, and then they're not friends again the rest of the year until the following Halloween. But this is the last time they'll be working for the pumpkin patch because it's their senior year of high school. They will be off in college next fall, and even though they can come back to the pumpkin patch and check it out and be guests there, they will never work the whole season again like how they like and be that type of friends. So this is their like last hurrah. It's Halloween night, and Deja is going to make sure that they enjoy the pumpkin patch to the fullest, while at the same time making sure that Josie goes and talks to this girl he's had a crush on like the entire time they've been working there. One of my favorite lines from this is Josie is asking Deja, "Why are you putting me up to this? You never cared about my romantic future before." And Deja replies, "I already told you. I'm your friend, and friends don't let friends live small lives." I just really love that. I love the food in here. I love the colors, the characters, the humor. I think it's just really cute, and it's a good way to start the fall and get hyped about everything, and I gave this 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Dark Horse by Craig Johnson. So this is book 5 in the Longmire mystery series by Craig Johnson. If you watch Longmire, like the show, you might also enjoy this. This is, I will say, I think the humor is far greater in the series, like the book series, than in the show. The show tends to take a little darker feel to things, I guess, most of the time. And to be honest, I can't read this book now without picturing the actors involved in the show, but that's okay with me. The actors themselves in the show are pretty close to how they are in the book series, although Walt is a little more uncommunicative than he is in the book, but of course this is told from Walt's perspective, so we are going to get more of like his inner world overall, which I actually quite enjoy. He's a really funny guy, so I do like this a lot, even though I do love the actor and the others. He's like stellar. Henry is my favorite character in the series. Henry Standing Bear, he is fucking great. There's honestly, I don't think there was enough of him in this volume, though he was in here. There's definitely not enough Vic in here. I love her. But yeah, the characters are the major draw of this series. I really enjoy them. I love their interactions with others, their interactions with each other, their interactions with other people in situations. I like the humor in here. I sometimes find that the investigative bits are a little bit hard to understand sometimes. I think that's the weakness of this series overall, is rather than explaining all of the time what Walt is doing, he just kind of does it without you really being able to figure out why he's doing it, I suppose, or what his reasoning is behind things, which doesn't always bother me, I suppose, in something like a Poirot novel, because Poirot tends to keep things really close to his chest. But that's an entirely different kind of mystery than this series is, really. This is more like a police procedural kind of vibe, whereas something like Poirot is more, I don't want to say like cozy mystery, because it's definitely not what I would consider a cozy mystery, really, but it's more like, you know, the golden age of mystery, like vintage stuff. The vibe is like far different. This was fairly action-packed, especially the last third of the book. The last third of the book definitely had me on the edge of my seat while I was reading this, and I was really satisfied with the conclusion, and yeah, I enjoyed it, especially the last, like, I would say definitely the last half or so. Something I really didn't enjoy about this volume, though, I will say, is the time shifts that happened. It, I think, flashed backwards and forwards far too much to like past dates and times and events that were going on then, and then back to present day again. It did it far too much for my taste, and it was extremely jarring every time like time shifted again. And I would say that's also something that I found to be kind of a weakness in this, was it just kept being really jarring and taking me out of the story every time we had yet another time shift. But still, overall, I did enjoy this. I do want to continue reading more of the Longmire series, but I think this might be a case of, because it's taken me, I want to say something like 3 years to get through just 5 books. The first 5 in the series that I bought is taking me 3 years to get through all of them. I'm thinking that this is going to be a series that I shelve for a little bit. I do want to continue in it, but there's other series that I'm just far more interested in continuing in right now, so I'm probably going to focus on those for now and then come back to this eventually. I will say it's a pretty stellar read if you're into, like, I guess a little bit Western. I would say more like Western style mysteries. Like, if you're a fan of Tony Hillerman, you will probably enjoy the Longmire series. I think even Tony Hillerman and Craig Johnson is Tony Hillerman still alive? They were or are still friends. So, yeah. And if you want to, if you have read this series and you want to watch the show, but you aren't, or you haven't read this but you want to watch the show, you can watch the show without getting spoiled, because one of the other book, no, 2 of the other books that I've read so far in this series did have some similar events to a couple of episodes of the show, but the endings were completely different, and situations they were just entirely different. So there's no fear of spoilers. Basically, they've handled things entirely differently. Almost basically the only thing that's the same about the show are character names and at least most of the characters' personalities. And then I ended up reading a whole bunch of Amulet by Kazuki Buishi. This is a series following Emily and Naveen. They had a tragedy happen a couple of years prior, and they and their mother end up moving into their ancestral home for a fresh start. Only their first night there, a creepy monster comes just out of nowhere and drags their mother off into a parallel world, and Emily and Naveen follow her to save her and end up getting caught up in the wars and politics of this new world that they have now been dragged into to kind of help save, basically. Emily becomes attached to an amulet, and shit just goes from there. So, yeah, I read Volume 2, The Stonekeeper's Curse, which I gave 5 stars. 3, The Cloud Searchers, which I also gave 5 stars. 4, The Last Council, which I gave 5 stars. 5, The Prince of the Elves, which I also gave 5 stars. I will say there is a monster in here, this one on the cover here, that I really didn't like because it gave me major heebie-jeebies, but still liked it. Book 6, Escape from Lucian, which I gave 4 stars because a couple of events happened in here that kind of took my rating down a little bit. What is this? 7, which is Firelight, which I gave 5 stars. And book 8, Supernova, which I also gave 5 stars. This series has some of the most gorgeous art that I have ever seen in a graphic novel, to be honest. It is just absolutely beautiful. It has a really vibrant, amazing world. These are completely and utterly action-packed. Sometimes, even though it's not really like a lot happens, it feels like a lot has happened within the volume. There's definitely a lot going on throughout. There is a hell of a lot of Deus Ex Machina in this series, I do have to say. It's almost to a detrimental degree, but I can't help myself. I keep picking up these volumes anyway because, again, they're just gorgeously illustrated. I really enjoy the characters. I'm really enjoying the story. The world keeps getting fleshed out a little bit more, and it is very enjoyable. And Mr. Kibuishi, where's volume 9? I know, I apologize, you're probably getting this question a lot, but this cliffhanger, man, I mean, it's not as bad as it could have been, but still, I'm like, come on, man. This was in 2018. It's 2022. We're supposed to be getting a volume this year, right? Like, please, 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 can we get the final volume? That's all I'm asking. The final number 9. Please and thank you. And then the last book that I read was The Field Guide to Dumb Birds of North America by Matt Cracked. This guide is partially helpful, but is mainly just for fun. There is like a tips section within this guide about, like, you know, what to do and what not to do. Like, obviously not going into someone else's property to look for birds are kind of serious, but the rest of it is in pure fun. I really like this. This is absolutely hilarious. If you just like birds or you are into bird watching, I think you'll enjoy it either way. I, again, found it really funny. Overall, like, Dumb Western Bluebird, a Western Meadow Jerk, Redwing Buttwad. If your sense of humor is mildly childish, I guess you'll probably really enjoy this. I did. I thought this was great. This is definitely a book that I'm going to bring up to basically everyone that I come across. And there's actually some really good drawings. Like, this is basically the kind of art that's in there, and that's some fairly good field drawings of birds. It's just really great. This is hilarious, and I think one of my favorite parts of this book is actually the acknowledgments in the back. And it is to the author's wife, Gina. He said, most of all to my wife Gina, whose love never ebbs and whose support while writing this has never faltered. From the moment I sheepishly admitted that I had sort of accidentally created a blog about dumb birds with thousands of followers. Oh, did I not mention that before? Well, anyway, now I think I might be writing a book. I love it. That's great. Also, I need to find his blog then, and if it still like exists, and look at it because that sounds pretty great. Yeah, I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. So that is it, folks. That is everything that I ended up reading in September. For the most part, I really enjoyed myself. It was overall a really good reading month, pretty solid, and I think kind of made up for my, I won't say like bad reading months over the summer, because I did read a lot of really good books over the summer, but I guess maybe lackluster reading months over the summer, because, well, I did read some good books. I also had a few bummers and stuff, and wasn't feeling very jazzed about most of what I read, I guess. So I think September kind of made up for it, because I had a really good time with what I read, even though majority of it was like graphic novels and they didn't take me that long. And there was like a big chunk of time where I actually didn't read anything. But yeah. Anyway, I hope you all had a wonderful reading month, and I hope that so far October is treating you great. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you would like to subscribe, please do so, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!